Thank you for joining Cancer Support Community Atlanta for this program. Please visit our website, cscatlanta.org, for a complete list of live and recorded events. We invite you to sign up for our newsletter to stay connected to all future programs.
So, I've been doing a series on NextOvers where we talk about how to increase one ingredient and use it multiple times throughout the week in different ways. So it's a little different than leftovers. I didn't come up with this concept. Epicurious.com is where I first encountered this concept a few years ago. Come on in. And so today we are talking about that in the context of chickpeas. So I really have gotten into cooking a lot of beans from dry. There is nothing wrong with canned beans. We're going to use both canned beans today and beans that I cooked from dry. I like cooking beans from dry because it gives you access to a lot more variety of beans. You can also control the sodium if that's something you're concerned about, and you can also control the texture. I sometimes find, especially with chickpeas, but with other beans too, that sometimes they're just not cooked super evenly or consistency, or from brand to brand. You'll have more of a crunchier chickpea versus a softer chickpea. You can always cook them more, but then what's the point of buying canned? So it just gives you some more control in that way. There's lots of lore out there about the best way to cook beans. People have lots of opinions about whether you soak or you don't soak. Do you pressure cook them? Do you not pressure cook them? I've done all of the ways. And I find that for me, because I often don't remember to plan ahead, a pressure cooker is great because you can cook them pretty fast. Depending on the bean, if you pressure cook them without soaking them, you can, but you're going to tend to have a little bit more inconsistency. That pressure sometimes will blow open or break some of the beans. So my favorite method is to bring them to a boil on the stove for about 10 minutes, add the salt, and then put them in a low oven for a couple of hours because it's hands off. And then I usually do a pound at a time. So that is going to make about this many. This was a pound of chickpeas. And then I will use them all week long in all kinds of things. I also keep canned chickpeas in my pantry because sometimes if I don't have these, then it's good to have something else. It's good to have both options. But definitely dry beans is going to give you more variety, and it's going to give you, it's definitely a lot cheaper as well. But either way, even if you're buying canned, beans are such a great source of protein, great source of fiber. Even my kids who sometimes get a little picky with vegetables, if I've gotten a bean in them, I'm like, we're good. We'll call it done. All right, so to get started today, we are going to make a chopped salad. Then we're going to move on to a coconut chickpea curry, and then we're going to finish with the thing that most people think about when they think about chickpeas, which is hummus. In your recipe packets there, two of these recipes are written in the form of, when I go to write a recipe, sometimes I struggle with, well, I could write it this way or this way or this way or this way, and so I tend to write sort of outlines to kind of invite you to adapt it however you want to adapt it. All right, so to get started, we are going to make a chopped salad. So what I normally do with a chopped salad, I got really excited about chopped salads last summer when I was visiting a friend who had rented a house for a milestone birthday and invited friends just to come hang out, So friends were coming and going throughout the week, and I happened to be one of the last friends there. So it was the last couple days of the trip, and they had all these friends who'd been cooking for 2 weeks and had odds and ends of leftovers in the fridge, and I was like, I know what to do with this half a bell pepper and this little rind of cheese and this, half a thing of salami and, that can of beans. And then it was just so refreshing and crunchy and can just hang out in your refrigerator. I was like, I want to just eat this all summer. So yeah, I've been real excited about chopped salads in summer ever since. Okay, so to get started, I am going to mince up some garlic. Because we're going to be doing a lot of chopping, I will talk a lot about different knife skills for different things. So with garlic, if I was putting in something like this chickpea curry, I would just slice it and keep it moving. But for something like a vinaigrette, since it's going to be raw, I want it to be really well incorporated because I don't necessarily want to chomp down on a big hunk of raw garlic. So to put garlic in a vinaigrette, what I like to do is mince it pretty small, and then I sprinkle it with a little bit of salt. That's going to start letting the liquid release from it. So I'm going to keep chopping it a little bit more with that salt on it. And then I'm going to use the side of my knife, kind of like a palette knife, to kind of squish it so that we are starting to make a paste. And that's going to just help your garlic incorporate so that nobody gets some big hunk of raw garlic in their teeth, which can be a little startling. All right, so with the chopped salad, I like to make the vinaigrette in the bowl that I'm going to build the salad in, so that then as I chop up my ingredients, I can just add them and keep it moving. I didn't put a specific recipe for this exact, like I said in there, I have sort of an outline for how to build a vinaigrette. Can I get this off? Looks like my nails won't go into it. There we go. So, I often, when I'm making a vinaigrette, don't exactly always measure things. I just wing it and go for it. So I started with 2 cloves of garlic. We're going to add in a little bit of oregano. I also tend to not use a lot of dry spices in my cooking, but this sort of Italian-style chopped salad, it just really works. Get a little bit of salt in there on that garlic. We're going to add just a little bit more. Fresh black pepper. And then I'm not so much worried about how much of the liquid I'm going to use, but for a chopped salad, I tend to think that a ratio of oil to acid, so in this case our acid ingredient is going to be lemon and red wine vinegar. I tend to go more of like a 1-to-1 ratio, where with a regular vinaigrette, if I was going to use a more tender lettuce, I would probably use more olive oil, more like 3-to-1 to the olive oil to vinegar. The other thing I always like to do if I'm using lemon juice is zest the lemon, because it's got such delicious flavor, and why not waste it? It just adds more really nice flavor. So when I was TAing for cooking classes in grad school, every single time, if we had lemon or citrus to zest, you had to remind people, zest before you juice, because zesting an already juiced lemon is really no fun at all. It's possible, but it's not ideal. And this is absolutely the best tool for zesting, which is a microplane. It is originally was a wood rasp, so like a woodworking tool that somebody put a handle on, and all the chefs got excited. They were like, this is so great for Parmesan or hard cheeses, for citrus zest, because it helps you get that zest without getting into the bitter white pith. So I'm measuring this just so that I can see about what my ratio is going to be for the acid ingredients and the olive oil ingredients. All right, so right now I've got about 1/4 of a cup of lemon juice. So we're going to do a little bit more of vinegar. We'll get that up to about 1/3 of a cup. And we're going to, I probably didn't pour enough olive oil in here. Let's see if that gets us a little bit more olive oil from down here. Get us to 2/3. This particular one is made by a company called Zule that I've never heard of. I have had a lot of these. A lot of them you'll find are enamel like this. I've recently switched to a plastic one because I've found that the enamel ones do start to chip off over time. This one's kind of nice because it's got sort of the little adapter for limes, which are smaller than lemons. So that's kind of fun. But yeah, they're all pretty much made similarly, and you can get them at Target, at Amazon. All right, so I'm just going to give this a little stir to get everything really incorporated. I don't have mustard or anything in this vinaigrette to emulsify it. It's more like oil and vinegar style. And then I'm just going to start as I chop my vegetables. I am going to just add them right into the bowl, and we'll mix them as we go. So since we're going to chop a lot of vegetables, I thought I'd talk a little bit about knife skills and how we cut different shaped things. Some of you guys, we got a lot more people than when I started. So I am not a chef that was ever trained in culinary school. I am a registered dietitian. I've worked in kitchens for a really long time. And as my mom used to say, even though she had a catering business, I'm not a chef, I'm just a mom who cooks. So practice is how I learned a lot of this. Drop that little in right there. So when we are cutting onions, my favorite way to cut onions is to cut it from root to stem, and then sort of arch my knife almost like around, so I'm making wedges, almost like I'm going around a rainbow. And then make slices along, and then you've got a nice even dice right there. I'm also purposely starting with this onion because we're going to get it right into all of that acid, and that vinegar and lemon juice is going to really cut down on that strong onion flavor, mellow it out a bit, which I think raw onions have their place, but I sometimes think that you want to turn the volume down on them just a little bit. So there we go. We got all that onion in there. We'll give it a little stir. And then, like I said, when you're making a chopped salad and the recipe is in there, this is sort of a clean out the fridge situation. So these are things that I happen to pick or often have around sometimes. Fennel is a nice, fun, crunchy vegetable. The other thing about chopped salads is that you want sort of a variety of textures, sort of contrasting textures. You want things to be relatively evenly diced. The idea here is that you want to be able to eat it with a spoon and have a bunch of different pieces all in the same bite, right? So we want to chop everything relatively evenly. Who's familiar with chopping fennel? All right. So fennel's a bulb. It's got this kind of hard core in the middle that is almost too fibrous to eat, so we're going to work around that. You can use the top frondy bits just for seasoning. They have more of a, even a stronger anisey flavor than fennel. So we're cut it in half, and then I'm going to put it half down, and then I don't know exactly where that core is, so we're just going to sort of make a cut and realize that we're going to kind of get closer until we can expose it. And then I'm going to cut that core out. Give it a couple of slices so that then we are pretty close to the same size, and they go in the bowl. That's the lid to the oregano that just fell on the floor. All right, we're working around that core. So for those of you who joined after I talked a little bit about the way I often write recipes, when I sit down to write a recipe, sometimes I think about all of the different ways that you could do it, and I don't want to limit myself to say, like, this is the way. So, because some days you want to do it like this, and some days you want to do it like that. So on the chopped salad recipe that you have there, it is a recipe outline, really. Sometimes I'll give you sort of ratios of things or ideas of ingredients to use, suggestions, but you don't have to feel like you're completely committed to something. And then even within that, I previously had written how to build a vinaigrette without a recipe. So that recipe is written the same way. Because today I'm going to make this chopped salad this way because this is what I have, but next week it might have different stuff in it. All right. Is that me? All right, so every time we throw in something, we're going to give it a stir so that it can all start marinating. The other thing about this is that sometimes I get to the end and I'm like, maybe I don't have enough vinaigrette in here. Maybe I want a little bit more. And so I will just add more. All right, cabbage. This is Napa cabbage. Any kind of cabbage is great and is nice and crunchy. When I'm going to cut up cabbage, but I don't think I'm going to use the whole head right then, I tend to avoid cutting it in half because I find that it lasts longer if you can kind of keep it intact. So rather than raggedy looking one. So I will peel the leaves off and sort of stack them up on top of each other. And then if I don't get to all the cabbage today, then I've got some for later, and it still will last a good bit longer in the fridge. So we'll go there, all that done. And cabbage, I really enjoy, but if you're just cutting up a single head of cabbage, that's a lot of cabbage, right? It's like, sometimes you're like, I can only eat so much. So we're just going to go right down this pile of cabbage to make long, thin strips. We'll go down the other direction to get us chopped up. So right now I chose the things we're starting with are mostly really crunchy vegetables, but in a chopped salad I do like to have some contrast both in flavor and texture. So that's where our chickpeas are going to come in. They're going to add sort of a nice softer element. Sometimes I'll put boiled eggs or chunks of cheese. Oh, before I go much further, I know we've got one vegetarian in the room. Do you have any other dietary restrictions? Nuts, dairy? No dairy, okay. So yeah, sometimes I'll put cheese in a chopped salad, but I will pull your serving out. I do have a little bit of fresh mozzarella we can add. It's not a must. All right, bell peppers. I usually stick these up upright and cut them top to bottom and sort of work around that middle seed bit. Don't worry too much about the white pithy part. I'm happy to leave some of that in there. Did you guys know that the highest concentration of vitamin C in a bell pepper is actually in the white part in the middle? Also, for a spicy pepper, along with the seeds, the spiciest part is that membrane in the middle. So same thing, basically making long strips of something. That's even the idea with the onion, cutting it that way, right? Is you're sort of like making long strips and then going in the other direction. Some people find cutting to be a super arduous chore, and as I was talking to Christy earlier, she was talking about how she finds cutting to be sort of zen and meditative. Do we have people in one or the other of those camps? Which camps are you in? Perfect. Make chopped salads. Is anybody in the, oh, what a chore camp? Okay. Yeah, I do too. Awesome. Well, then you came to the right demo today. And like I said, like this is what I like. I like to have a chopped salad just in my fridge. It's like, oh, food's already made. It can hang out in there for days and just get yummier.
How long would it last?
I would say it kind of depends on what vegetables you've got in there and whether you've got fresh herbs and cheese and stuff. But 5 days would be good. All right, what else we got? We got some cucumber, good crunchy vegetable. Again, same thing. We're going to go long first. Get ourselves some nice long strips, and then dice the other direction. You don't have to skin them. You can skin them, but you don't have to. Yeah. I mean, I'd wash them. If you don't like the skin and you're still eating cucumbers, then as a dietitian, we're happy, right? But there's nothing inedible about the skin. It's just a preference. Now, yeah, are there different nutrients in the skin? For sure. Anytime you see a color in a vegetable, that color came from, plant chemicals that gave it that color, and those plant chemicals are often really great and supportive for our bodies. So that's why dietitians like to tell you to eat the rainbow and eat a variety of things, is because there are different plant chemicals that make different colors, and they're all really great for us. So the more variety you can get, then the more of those anti-inflammatory, cancer and heart disease fighting plant chemicals you're getting. But again, if you just don't want to eat the skin, don't eat the skin, right? Like, I think sometimes when we're told something is better for us, we sort of feel like we have to do it. And no. I mean, so the carrots earlier, I actually cut up some carrots to go with the hummus, and they were a little hairy. And I just ran my knife down it until I knocked some of that off. I didn't feel like I needed to pull out the vegetable peeler. So that was a yellow squash. It's a variety of squash. It's not that same variety. That had a little green on the end called a zephyr squash, but squash, zucchini works great here. Usually with squash, with a crook neck squash, I'll cut the crooked end off first because that just makes it a little easier to work with. Also, with most vegetables that are round, if you can create a flat surface and then work from there, your cutting job just got easier. or if you cut off curvy weird bits and sort of break it into more square sections. All right, so that is most of our chopping. And now, as you can see, we've made a lot of salad. So that's the other thing that's great about these is that they last because you've got a lot. But I have a lot of people here today, so. All right, so that's all the vegetable component of our chopped salad. We're going to switch over to the flavor contrast piece. So I tend to have odds and ends of things in my refrigerator, like olives and capers and sun-dried tomatoes. I've got chickpeas for this one. Like I said, we're going to use a combination of canned and cooked from dry today. We use the canned in here. In general, this is a broad generalization. But in general, I find that a lot of canned chickpeas are a little more toothsome and have a little bit of more bite, so they might stand up a little bit better in a salad like this, where they're going to get tossed and beat around. I drained them because I didn't want all that liquid in here, but it did save the liquid because we might use it in another application. This liquid will have more sodium than the chickpeas, so if that's something you're concerned about, then draining them will reduce the sodium. Both kinds of chickpeas that I bought happen to be no salt added. Oh yeah, good question about the gas. The thing that impacts the gas the most for most people is how used to eating beans your digestive system is. So if you are new to beans, go slow, right? Proceed slowly and you'll be in good situation. I'm going to use the other end of this fork to fish some of these capers out. So I've got all these nice crunchy vegetables. I like to, in a chopped salad, to have a little bit of contrast in flavor, contrast in texture, add some bright, sharp flavors. I've got olives, which I know can be sometimes polarizing for some people. This is almost what I like to call a gateway olive because it's a really mild, buttery olive. It's not as strong as like a Kalamata olive or something like that. I'm going to put a few of these in here. I'm going to chop them up, but not too tiny, so if you're not an olive person, they're easy enough to avoid. I tend to like to roll around a little bit, so you kind of have to chase them. All right. And then a lot of times people will put salami or pepperoni or something in a salad like this, which is tasty. But if you don't eat meat or you're watching your sodium or something, this is a sun-dried tomato, sort of gives you that same textural experience of something a little bit chewy. So these happen to be sun-dried tomatoes that were halved. You can buy them already julienned or stripped up. They also, are often in oil, so they have like that. Oil adds a lot of nice flavor. If you use that in other things, don't throw it out. Save that sun-dried tomato oil. All right. A few more of these, and then we're going to shift over and get our curry going. Welcome to everyone who joined us. We are making a chopped salad. All right, let's see, what else do we have? So I think we're going to let this hang out for a little while, and then I'm going to come back and taste it and decide what else we need. Does it need more salt? Does it need more acid? Does it need more of something? But I'm going to shift over to our chickpea curry. Okay, chickpea curry. Okay. So this is another one of those things that you can make it a lot of different ways. You can alter the vegetables that you have and are using. I have some vegetables in the freezer. You can use a combination of fresh vegetables, frozen vegetables if you like. We're gonna use some frozen cauliflower and green beans in here today. All right, so we're gonna start with medium-high heat on our pan. This is another one of those things that I often have it's like pantry staples almost. So I often have, if I don't know what else to make, I can often, like keeping cans of beans, keeping coconut milk, onions, carrots, garlic, that kind of stuff in your kitchen. And you can usually make all kinds of different things. The curry powder that I'm using here, I included a recipe for. I have adapted it. You can buy whatever curry powder that you like to buy if you have one that you know you like. Or I've made Donovan's curry. My son helps me make it because he likes to put his name on things. But it comes from this cookbook called The Spice Merchant's Daughter that I really, really love. She is a chef from Sri Lanka. So it's, curries, of course, mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people depending on where you are from. So this one is going to be a little bit more in the vein of, Southeast Asia, Thailand, sort of thing. Sri Lanka, perhaps, since that's the curry powder blend that I use. But you'll see on the very last page, I have 2 different versions of curry powder if you wanted to make your own. I like to make my own because I have one kid that likes really spicy food and one kid that does not tolerate spicy food at all. And I have found that a lot of the commercially prepared curry powders are too spicy for her. I mean, black pepper is too spicy for her, let's be real. Sometimes. She's getting better. Or sometimes she'll say it's spicy, and I'm like, I think you just mean seasoned. So I make my own. And over time, as I've purchased more, whole spices, I keep an old coffee grinder, like a blade coffee grinder around that I've now repurposed as a spice grinder. Because if you get into cooking with whole spices, cloves and whole cinnamon sticks and fennel and cumin and all that kind of stuff, I think you'll really notice that the difference in those flavors is really remarkable because spices are full of all these volatile organic compounds, which is why they taste and smell the way they do. And when we grind them, they start to lose those. And so the spices that you buy in the store, the clock's already ticking on them. Does that mean that you should always only ever get your whole spices out and grind them every time you're cooking? No, of course not. We don't have time for that. So I usually keep a combination of both. Or sometimes I grind in batches. Cardamom. It comes in 2 varieties. There's green cardamom pods and black cardamom pods. They have different flavors. But I sort of put it in the category of baking spices, right? It's sort of like a warm, sweet spice. I don't know that we have any up there right now for you to, but it's got a really unique flavor. And you can buy it whole in the pods, but some people will put those pods in rice or other things. You can buy just the little black seeds that are inside, which if you were making a spice blend, that's the part that you need. or you can buy it already ground. I actually recently found, somebody gave me an extract, almost like vanilla extract, but cardamom extract. Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of that. Okay, so I've got my aromatics in there, my carrots, my onions, my garlic. Did I put garlic in there? I think I did. A little bit of salt. And then before we add the liquid, I like to add the curry powder. I often don't measure it because I always find that I add more. And that's just having the curry powder in there first just helps you wake it up a little bit. The spices were all toasted at the time that I made the powder. Put my peanut butter away. All right, so we'll go ahead and add those chickpeas. Okay, I'm using a can of coconut cream because that's what was in the pantry here. So it's going to be thicker than just coconut milk. And when you're making this curry, you can make it more thin and soupy, or you can make it more thick and hearty. And you can just sort of, it's like choose your own adventure. You can sort of decide whether you just want to eat it in a bowl like this or whether you want to eat it with some rice. I have made some rice today, so we can eat it with rice. All right, so we're going to get all this incorporated in here. See, it's kind of soupy. I saved that chickpea liquid. Which you could just add water if you wanted more water, if you wanted to thin it out some. Yeah, so somebody, can't believe it took us this long to discover it, but chickpea liquid, which it works with other bean liquids as well, has been retitled aquafaba. Yeah, and it has properties that, from a food science standpoint, are really interesting because they will create foam in the same way that egg white will create a foam, which, if you're making all sorts of things, can be particularly useful. So you can thicken things with it. You can make a meringue even. Like, it'll foam up. You can whip them like you would whip egg whites into a meringue, which is kind of wild. I'm going to add a little bit more. I'm actually going to add all of this because we have a lot more vegetables to add. I want to make sure we have plenty. All right, so you guys saw how fast and easy that was. It was boom, right? I'm going to let that reduce just a little bit, and then I'm going to add in these vegetables. At the point that you decide to add your other vegetables, or whatever vegetables you want to use here, like I said today, I've chosen cauliflower and green beans. They cook at about the same rate, so I'm going to add them at the same time. I added the carrots and onions earlier because they take a little bit longer to get soft. So we're going to let this cook down just a little bit. And let's go check on that chopped salad and see how it's. Hello, chopped salad. All right. My pile of tasting spoons here. Make sure we get a good representative sample. Pretty good, but it needs some more oomph. So, a couple different ways you can add oomph if something is feeling a little flat. Acid is a good place to go. Sometimes it just needs more salt, and in this situation it definitely needs some more salt, so I'm going to add some more salt because we've got a good amount in it. That's the other thing about chopped salads. Like, I could give you ratios of like this many cups of this and this many cups of that, but like that's not necessarily what you have, right? So just know that you're going to adapt and roll with it. I'm also going to use a little bit of this. That's got yummy flavor. dried fruit, raisins, or chopped dates, or apricots, cranberries, fresh herbs. All right, so we're at a pretty heavy simmer over here. Let's dial this down a little bit. That's up. There we go. Okay. I am just gonna dump this in. Dump this in. At this point, you can cook this until your vegetables are done. Now, what does vegetables done mean? Depends on you, right? Like, maybe you're wanting something really soft, and, you know, it's wintry and warming, and you want it all sort of cooked down. Maybe you are like my father, who is very southern and does not eat squeaky green beans. And to each their own. Does this lid fit? Yes. So I've turned it down. I want it at a simmer. I just added frozen vegetables, so it's going to take just a minute until it gets to a simmer. All right. All right, so we're going to taste again. We're going to see how you are doing. Again, trying to find a representative sample here of all the right stuff. Better. Much better. Awesome. You want to start serving this? That would be great. I think we should pull out, there's one person that's no dairy. Everybody else good with cheese? Cool, okay. So we'll pull out that serving, and then we'll stir in the mozzarella. Sometimes I use chopped up boiled eggs. My daughter likes boiled eggs in her lunch. Sometimes I have leftover, so chuck in a chopped egg in there if you like. Okay, so that's working. We are going to finally switch gears at the end to our hummus. So I'm going to make the most like basic of versions of hummus. Know that it's just sort of a basic a palette for whatever other flavors you want to go. Why would you make hummus instead of buy hummus? Because I find that homemade hummus is just tastier. It's also multiple times cheaper. So I often don't measure with hummus either, but a ratio that I find useful when you're making hummus is for 1 can of beans, if you're using canned beans, to 1/3 of liquid. The liquid can be olive oil, can be, did we pull out the serving? Yeah. Do you want to add the cheese to it? Sure. Yeah, do it. You got it, Christy. Right. Building your confidence in the kitchen. So I was like,
apologize in advance.
You can,
add the cheese.
if I don't add it, just
so add all of it?
Yep, add all of it and stir it in until it looks like it's evenly mixed. She's cooking. It's that simple. Just trying to build everybody's confidence.
Yeah.
All right. So, if you like a super, super smooth hummus, that might be another reason to cook your own chickpeas, because then you can cook them more. So actually yesterday when I cooked these, I forgot about them for a little bit, took my kids down to the pool, and then came back and was like, oh right, they're still in the oven, in that low, because it takes several hours. And I was like, great, they're a little bit overcooked, they're gonna go right in this hummus. I did read a recipe somewhere once where to have the smoothest ever hummus. She took a can of chickpeas and peeled all of these little skins off, which sounds like, I'm glad you have that. She did acknowledge in the recipe that like, I saw you nodding over there. You're like, I'm into it, yes. No judgment. It does make the smoothest hummus you've ever had. A little less smooth, right. Yeah, if you need that kind of project in your life. Let me grab my microplane down here. Oh, it looks perfect. Good job. All right, so. You could. I normally make hummus in a food processor. The food processor here did not want to turn on today, so we're using a blender. Sometimes I find in a blender you might need to make your hummus a little bit more thin just to really get it all incorporated. This is like the Mac Daddy of blenders, Vitamix, so I have a lot of confidence in its power. So that ratio we were talking about. Most cans of beans have about 1.5 cups of beans in them. So 1.5 cups of beans to 1/3 cup of liquid, and that's all in your outline in there. Because we got a lot of people, and that 1 can of beans is probably only going to make about 1 cup of hummus. We're going to double it up. So I'm going to do 3 generous cups of beans. This has liquid down at the bottom of it. I didn't fully drain it all. But we want that liquid in there because we might need it later to thin things out. And literally, we are just dumping all in here. I'm not going to pre-mince this garlic. I'm just going to chuck it in there. So for our liquid, I like to do a combination of lemon juice and olive oil just for a real basic version. You can use lemon juice or not use lemon juice in your hummus. I tend to think that, beans themselves are kind of bland on their own, so I think they really accept strong flavors really well. I try never to waste that free extra flavor that you get from lemon zest. So if I'm putting lemon juice in something, I'm often putting lemon zest in it, because why not? I mean, probably. Is it enough for you to change your life? Probably not. For me, it's a culinary exercise more than a dietary exercise. I left my zester down there. Okay, so we're aiming for 2 cups. 2/3 cup of liquid here, and so I'm gonna see how much. A lot of lemons, but it just depends. You have about 1/4 cup of juice in the whole thing, but sometimes you have juicy lemons and sometimes you don't. I forgot to do it, but I often will take a lemon or a lime and roll it with my hand. Definitely get a lot more juice out of it if you take the time to do that. All right, so we're at about 1/3 cup. We're going to add the rest in the form of olive oil. Okay, and then we're dumping it in. Okay, so if you are making for real hummus, right? There are many people who would say if you didn't put tahini in it, you're not making hummus, you're making bean dip. So tahini is sesame seed paste. It's like peanut butter of sesame seeds. And if you have it, it's great in salad dressings and all sorts of dishes. I've even seen recipes with brownies. I'm going to sneak behind you to grab a spoon. Just like natural peanut butter, tahini separates when you first open it, so I like to give it a stir to get sort of an even amount in there. If you don't have tahini, can you still make hummus? Yes. Can you still call it hummus? Yes, but maybe not to your Mediterranean friends. Yes, I got this at Publix. What section? The Publix by my house, this particular, I won't go into all my feelings about how Publix organizes their store. but at my Publix, I found it in the international foods section. But I don't know that that's always where it is. We're going to put about 2 tablespoons in here. You can just not, you just leave it out. You could put peanut butter in it if you like peanut butter. This is your bean dip. Do whatever you like, right? If you put it in there and you like it, and you're going to eat it, great. We love it. You can use, as I say in there, you can add other vegetables. You can use any kind of bean you like. Again, like hummus is a specific thing, right? So from a cultural standpoint, yes, any kind of bean. Lentils, edamame, go for it. Go for it. Okay, it's about to get real loud, folks. Giving you a warning. All right, it's turned all the way up. Hummus and really any bean dips, again, with a blender, you might have to go more, like thin it out a little bit more than you might in a food processor, but you want to just blend it like you really mean it. I'm borrowing a little bit more liquid from here. All right. I'd like to leave it, but it wants to run off. All right, and just like with all these other things, you might nail it the first time, and you might taste it and be like, geez, this is bland. So then you've got a decision to make. Does it need more salt? Does it need, and if you're worried about how much salt you're putting in things, then maybe the first thing you grab is not salt, maybe it's an acid ingredient. And that can really turn up the volume on things. Just a little bit of water to it, because I really want it to switch that even made it go higher. I was like, it's all the way at 10. All right, so let's see what we got here. Pretty tasty. I think it just needs a little bit of salt. Almost done. On this and see how we're doing. Yay! You're welcome. What happened to my tasting? Isn't that the truth? All right, we're going to check on these green beans and see. I can go a little past squeaky. My dad's not here. Right, so I don't want to go too far, because I knew there was somebody in here that didn't want it full Southern style. So there's still some toothsomeness to it. I think this needs a fair amount more salt, and it needs more curry powder. And because this curry powder, because I make it so that my daughter will eat it, it doesn't have any spicy ingredients in it at all, so it's very, very mild. And then for my son, who likes spicy things, tell him, you know, get your cayenne, get your sriracha, get your whatever other spicy ingredient you need, because we can turn it up, but we can't turn it back down. Whatever kind of salt they have here. I think it's just fine sea salt. I do like sometimes I use kosher salt, sometimes I use sea salt. I tend not to get iodized salt just because I don't like that anti-caking ingredients that they have in there. All right, let's see where we're at now. This needs acid. It's pretty good on salt. But thankfully, I bought a spare lemon. Let's turn the heat up just a little bit on. Oh, it. Sometimes, if your lemon is real pointy like this, it can be kind of annoying. So I just cut that guy off, and it fits in this little thing much better. Yeah, so if things are just tasting a little like, it's not quite right, it's a little flat, I almost always turn. Now, again, for some people, if you like spicy things, the spice might be the direction that you turn. All right. So you could eat this sort of soup style if you want. I have made some rice for us. I happen to make black rice, which sounds real fancy. But I chose that because I was using up what was in the pantry. Chef Mike used it for a demo a few months ago. There it is. All right. So I'll put a little bit in this bowl so you can just get a nice visual, but then I'll get also we're going to finish this with some cilantro, which I'm not going to chop it up. I'm just going to give everybody a little sprig, and some toasted cashews. That way, if you are get that cilantro out of my face, you don't have to pick all the individual pieces out. And if you're like, yes, let's do it, you can tear it up and go for it. I'm going to just throw
Thank you for joining Cancer Support Community Atlanta for this program. If you're interested in other live or recorded programs, please visit the online program tab of our website, cscatlanta.org. Or follow us on Facebook. We'll be sharing additional information on upcoming programs.